depends on.
Okay.
That's usually where I split my time. So I break it down to there's three main things that people need for a good life.
Yeah.
It's health, it's wealth, and it's mindset.
Oof.
So health being the most important, because if you don't have health, none of the other stuff matters.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
So
look at Steve
once
Jobs and all of those guys, right?
yeah, once you get old, you will trade anything for that health. There's nothing that you're not going to give up so you can have another 5 years,
Yeah.
or for you to regain function. If your health is at a point where I can't do these things with my grandchildren, I will give up all the stuff that I spent my life accumulating in order to have that ability again.
Yeah.
So that's why it's got to be the foundation of everything.
Yeah.
Is usually people go through their life and they make these trade-offs where they're sacrificing health in order to gain material possessions.
Yeah.
But then later on in life, they're trading those material possessions for health.
Yeah.
So it doesn't that trade-off doesn't make any sense. Where you could just not make that trade-off early on, and then now you have the benefit of decades of being able to use it.
Totally. Okay, wait. Let me do this formal intro to you and to this. I'm so excited. Well, first of all, happy Valentine's Day. You are my Valentine, essentially. Not in a weird way, but this is the first YouTube live I've ever done. It happens to be on Valentine's Day, and it's with you, so I couldn't be more excited. So, welcome to CrossFit for Health Summit Conversations, born from the inspiration and community spirit of the highly successful CrossFit for Health Summit. This is where we are going to continue the dialogue, diving into the stories, strategies, and insights, illuminating the path to health, fitness, and longevity through the power of CrossFit and the CrossFit community. Today, we have the privilege of hosting a remarkable individual whose journey embodies the essence of what it means to live at the intersection of physical prowess and everything else. He's known in the circles as the Wall Street Weightlifter, a title that only scratches the surface of who he is and what he's accomplished. Graciano Rubio isn't just a celebrated athlete in weightlifting, CrossFit, and strongman competitions. He's also a financial advisor, a coach, and the owner of CrossFit Valley View. His life is testament to the power of discipline, balance, and the relentless pursuit of excellence across all facets of life. In today's episode, we'll explore Graciano's approach to performance, fitness, health, and longevity and discover the lessons he's eager to share with the CrossFit community and beyond. Welcome, Graciano. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Thank you.
Did you love that intro?
It's pretty good. You've gotten pretty good at the intros.
Perfect. Okay. I think before we get stuck into like the CrossFit for Health Summit and everything that we discussed there and the panel that we want to focus on, tell us a little bit about your story, like where it all started. Like, how did you get to this point?
Well, when I first started in CrossFit. It first started off. I was just looking for a place to train where I could store my equipment for strongman. So I needed a place, and at the time, I was wasting so much time at a commercial gym that it made sense in terms of the time that I would save just to pay the membership and go to a CrossFit gym, because I'm wasting an easy 20, 30 minutes a day every time I go to the gym, waiting for stuff, just kind of dragging through the workout with too many people, not enough availability of the stuff I want to use. And in the couple years prior to that, the CrossFit athletes got really strong. So from probably like 2010 to 2013, their strength gains were so big that it had changed my perception of CrossFit. That it was first, you're supposed to look at the results first. You're supposed to take the data first, then go backwards to what you believe. Not start off with a belief and then test it. But these are the results these guys are getting. So what are they doing to get that? Obviously it works because they have the proof that it works. And I was a little interested in CrossFit by seeing these guys get that much stronger while maintaining those other abilities. And strongman and CrossFit have a lot of carryover. They're really not that far apart. People don't realize, most strongman events are going to be a minute long. And so you take any, max effort 1 minute interval you want, and it is totally miserable. So you can get on an assault bike for a minute and you start realizing a minute is a really long time. So because strongman takes so much conditioning, I thought, hey, I'll go out there and I'll check this thing out. And I always had the goal of opening a gym or helping people through fitness, but I didn't know the best way to do it.
Yeah.
I knew what I do is not going to work. So for years, I had friends that would come work out with me. I help people out in the gym, just when I'm there. But I knew what I do is not going to work. And I haven't seen any other thing that really works that well, especially long term. We're talking, how do we get people to adopt a lifestyle and continue doing this for a long time? And I had started seeing people in CrossFit produce, some good long-term results. So once I joined a gym and started meeting these people and started hearing from them how CrossFit has helped them, to me, it became pretty obvious that CrossFit was the best tool to use. That if there's a tool to use of how can you really make a difference in these people's lives, it's CrossFit. And the gym had been around at that point for maybe a year and a half. So you have people that started early on in those first 6 months. They've now been doing CrossFit for a year to a year and a half with life-changing results. We're talking people that have lost 30, 40 pounds in the last year, people that have doubled or tripled their work capacity. So before they could barely run 400 meters without stopping. And now they're running miles at a time continuously. And so those results were there. So I thought, how are they doing this? Clearly this is the best tool. There's nothing else with these kind of results. So I had went and got my level 1. I started reading the CrossFit Journal. And then I realized that everything in CrossFit was stolen from something else.
Okay, wait, expand on that.
So when you start reading it and you start seeing a lot of the stuff where Greg is pulling from, CrossFit at that time was pitched on the internet as like, oh, they're this new thing. They're doing all this crazy stuff. But then once you read the journal, you're like, wait a second. That's no different than what bodybuilders have been doing for the last 100 years. That's no different than what these strength athletes have done forever. So something like a couplet. In CrossFit, we call it a couplet.
Yeah.
In bodybuilding or strength sports or everywhere else, they just call it a superset. But it's the same thing. It's the same concept. It's the same reason why you do it. So it's not that a couplet is any different. It's the same thing with a different name. The same thing when someone calls something a triplet. Well, that's just a circuit. Everybody else calls it a circuit. They all do it. But if they do a circuit, it's cool. And if they do a triplet in CrossFit, it's lame. I said, you're doing the exact same thing. I don't see the difference in it. And even something like a chipper, that's just accessory work for time. So instead of 4 sets of 10, one exercise at a time, you're doing 4 rounds of 10 and moving from exercise to exercise. So you did all the same stuff. You just called it something different, and now it's no longer cool. So this one's acceptable and this one's not. So what was unique about CrossFit wasn't that they were making up new ways to train and new things. It's the way that they put it all back together.
Yeah.
Because if you look at when CrossFit first, you go back to the early thousands, most of the people in the gym have kind of isolated themselves and kind of self-select, like, oh, I'm a power lifter, I'm a weightlifter, I'm a bodybuilder. And CrossFit looked at it and tried to draw all the best ideas out of each one to put them together. So the basic principles of all of it is just stolen from somewhere else. They steal all the fundamentals of gymnastics, but then what's the only thing unique is the way they combine them. But the ingredients are all the same. It's just the new recipe. But they're not making something up with totally new ingredients. They're just combining them in a different way.
Right.
So then,
Yeah.
all that stuff that I had spent years learning about was like, oh, this is what they do. All the stuff that I had heard about CrossFit secondhand was all wrong.
Oh, okay.
And then it as time went on, as those members that I first met when they had done CrossFit for a year to a year and a half, they became people that had done it for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So that conviction grew, seeing all of these people who adopted a CrossFit lifestyle stick with it and then maintain and continue to improve, went from, okay, this clearly works, but it clearly works better long term. You can make some comparisons if you're going to evaluate a training program after 6 months. There's some other programs that you could compare the two to. Like, yeah, this program works too, this program works too. But when we look at 5 years, when we look at 10 years, nobody else is getting these people at that point in 5 or 10 years. All the other programs, people are falling off, and at 5 years, they're maybe a little bit better than when they started, or they look about the same. But we're seeing people that have been at the gym, I think 40% of our members here have been here for 5+ years. So they come in, they do it, they see the results, and then they stick with it. So that conviction grew over time, and mostly my belief in it has only grown. Seeing these people continue to progress, that belief grew. So one thing that I would say kind of differentiates myself is that since I didn't start as a CrossFit athlete, I only viewed it as a tool to help other people. So it was never like, oh, I want to learn all this stuff because I want to be, an elite games competitor. It's always been, how do I take this tool and use it to help these people? And it kind of changes the interpretation a bit, because now it's not like, oh, I'm part of this cult and I'm this diehard CrossFitter that's going to do every single thing that HQ says. It's no, I'm primarily looking at it as a tool to help people. And so I always make that distinction. Like, this is what's going to work for this person. If we're talking about someone who's never exercised before, or we're talking about someone who's worked out for 3 years consistently, or we're talking about an elite athlete, it's always, how can this tool help them? Not, this is what I do. This is what I think everyone else should do, and I love it, so you should do it too. It's just that this tool is effective at you reaching your goals.
I love that. I think, like, if we get back to that, the panel you were on at the CrossFit Health Summit, the performance versus fitness, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many in your affiliates, like how many games athletes do you have versus, and I think this kind of will be the same across most affiliates, right? Not the elite top performing affiliates, but how many of your members are training to be games athletes versus training for fitness?
We got a whole 0 game athletes. We have 0 games athletes. We have 0 semifinals athletes. The town that we are in, our county has one of the highest childhood obesity rates in the country. So the clientele that we work with are everyday people. They're people with full-time jobs. They're people with families. They have a lot of other responsibilities. And I think that's where CrossFit shines is with the everyday person, because of the efficiency.
Yep.
It's all of those people, it's all of those pieces that when we talk about fitness and we get just beyond the workouts, it's all of those pieces that people need. They need to be efficient with their time. That's number one. Get in, get it done, get out of here, go do something else. They need some level of coaching. They need to be guided so that their responsibility is to get their foot in the door. Your coach is there and the community is there to help you with the rest of it. So they'll teach you, they'll remind you how to do the warm-up, how to do the movements, how to do all that. You have a community of people that helps you with the other 23 hours of the day, so that when you leave here, you're not trying to go on this journey alone. You have people that are trying to make the same changes. So our clientele are just almost all everyday people. We have a few younger athletes that they're getting ready to go to college. We have one that's getting ready to go play college football, but that is the very small exception to what our average person looks like. I would say the average person, when they come to our gym, is dreading just the warm-up 400 on day one.
Yeah, for sure.
Thinking, I'm not sure if I can do this day one workout, which is all body weight, and we don't run more than 400 meters. And that's really what CrossFit is designed for. It shines with the everyday person, because the elite athletes have a variety of things that they can do. And they have a certain level of discipline and drive and motivation, where you could just write a program on a piece of paper and hand it to you, and they're going to come back and it's 100% completed. But most people, they got competing interests in their life. Oh, I had a stressful day at work. I'm going through a divorce. I have these problems. They need a different type of coaching. And it's a coaching that revolves more around the person and treating them in totality, rather than getting hyper specific about what movements, what time domains, your weaknesses, all those things. So most people here, they have no interest in going to the games.
I love that. How do we shift this perception, and how do you actually, like, in this community that you're saying has the highest instance of childhood obesity, you have a CrossFit gym, right? Like, people from the outside view it as this place that you can only come to if you're super fit, if you are at a level of athletic ability that's way beyond the norm. Like, how are you changing this perception within your community?
Oh, well, we're not. That's the big one. We're not changing that. We are trying to. We try to do it through telling the stories of people that have made these changes already, and we try to tell it. We have a lot of people that think that they're not fit enough to start CrossFit.
Yeah,
and they fail to see people at our gym that they don't think that they could get to that level, but they don't realize that person started off at a level below where they're currently at.
Yeah.
So you're looking at them thinking, oh, I could never get there. But when they started, they're worse than where you are now.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of effort to change the perception. Once you can, the rest of it's easy. But that perception is very difficult to change.
Okay, I want to shift over to performance versus fitness, right? Like how you as a competitor trained for performance versus how you now as a non-competitor train for fitness, and what that looks like with specific goals in your life.
Well, I think most of the training looks exactly the same.
Okay. Expand on that.
The big difference if you compete is you have certain days. So if you have a competition coming up, you only care about your performance on that particular day. So if I was getting ready for a competition 3 months from now, like I got that date circled on the calendar. My performance on any given day does not matter whatsoever, good or bad. All that matters is that day right there. So you work backwards from that date and think, how do I get myself prepared so that I put my best performance on the competition day? So you might have some checkpoints along the way. You might have some metrics that you use to kind of gauge, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I can expect to perform. But if you're just training for, if you don't have a specific competition you're getting ready for, most of it looks the same, but now you can take a little bit more advantage of your good days. You can back off a little on your bad days. So, like if I had a competition and I'm not feeling good, I'm doing the workout no matter what. Like no matter what, that workout has to be done, because if I skip this one workout, it throws off the rest of the training plan. So that means I have to force myself to do it. And maybe I try to compensate with extra sleep, cutting out some other stuff that I would do, hand off, maybe work less, sleep more, whatever it is to be able to recover if, you might get sick for a couple of days or something. But those workouts are kind of set in stone. They have to be completed. And the same thing about when you're feeling really good. Like there's days that you walk into the gym, you're like, man, I feel awesome. Like this is totally awesome. This is going to be a breeze. If I have a workout written, I'm going to stop myself from going harder than that. Because if I go too hard on this workout, I'm going to be too tired to do, the workout that's 3 days from now. So you're trying to manipulate your nervous system, and you're trying to control all of that so that on competition day, you're at your best. If you don't have a competition, then that means my good days, I'm going to push a little harder. Like on those good days, I don't care what happens in 1 or 2 weeks from now. I'm not worried about it. So I'm going to take more advantage of the good days. The bad days, I'm going to back off a little more than I otherwise would. And so without a competition, the process is still mostly the same, but there's more variability. Your good days are going to go harder. Your bad days, you're going to back off more. You're going to go with the flow a little bit more. And it's a lot less mentally stressful, because you're not getting fixated on how you're performing at any given moment. As long as, hey, this is trending up in the last 3 months, it's all improving. If I have a bad day, I just shake it off. I don't care. That was one bad day. I'm going to move on. I'll be here tomorrow. If I got a competition, 6 weeks from now, and I have a bad day, like that's going to wreck the rest of my day. Like I'm going to be thinking about it like, oh man, I'm not where I'm at. The training's not going well. I'm going to underperform. It's going to start being a big mental drain if you can't stick to the program. So it's probably 95% exactly the same, just with a little bit more variability and a lot less stress.
A lot less stress for sure. Okay, what do you mean? Like we were talking about this before we started, but CrossFit brings together, and this is what sets it apart as well, so many healthy habits, right? That we can implement in our lives that literally sets it apart from any other exercise or fitness community. What are those? What are the ones that you focus most on?
So we try to get people to prioritize their performance. We want them to focus on CrossFit's idea of relative intensity.
Ooh.
So when you start off on day one, we iterate this point over and over and over again. On day one, it does not matter how you perform.
I love that.
Any amount of exercise you're doing on day one is more than you did last week. So as long as you show up, as long as you exercise at all, you're going to get results. because you're going from zero exercise to some exercise.
Yeah.
And over time, you need to bump up that intensity. So you need to add a little weight to the bar. You got to run a little further, a little faster, get lower on your squats, do the movements better. So we get them to focus on that intensity portion, because I think a lot of habits trail as a result. So if someone is looking at their time, and we'll use an example of, let's say they have like an 8-minute Fran. They're super pumped. They just got their first Fran RX. They did it in 8 minutes. It sucked. Well, next time that workout shows up, we want it more than 8 minutes, or we want it faster than 8 minutes.
Yeah.
That is what gets you results. I'd rather see a faster Fran than 2 slow Frans.
Yeah.
So if we get them to focus on the performance part of it, then what they do is they start changing their habits in order to support a faster Fran. So we joke that when you go through the 5 stages of grief, whenever you see a workout like that. So you go through denial, you go through anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So if you see Fran on the board, your first thing that you react is you deny it. Like, oh, no, we don't have to do Fran tomorrow. That's not really the workout. You're angry at the programmer.
So angry.
You start bargaining with yourself. Oh, well, maybe I do it this way, or maybe I do it that way. You're depressed for a short period of time, and then you finally accept it.
And you're like, fuck it, I'm going to do it.
Right. And when you hit that acceptance part, then you start thinking, okay, what do I need to do to actually make that happen?
Yeah.
And when you hit that acceptance part and you saw the work, it used to be everyone released their workout at like 8 p.m. the night before. So when you saw the workout, now you're doing Fran tomorrow. It's a little easier for them to turn the TV off and go to bed. Because you don't want to do Fran with a poor night of sleep.
Yes.
So you're looking at it and saying your consequence of bad sleep happens over time. One bad night of sleep is not a big deal, but now instead of a long-term consequence, you have a short-term consequence.
Mm-hmm.
That this night of sleep, I understand immediately this is going to impact me tomorrow. So you turn the TV off, you go to bed. The next day, you haven't forgot about Fran. Like, what you're going to do when you get off of work and go to the gym. So if your coworkers want to go out to lunch, you're not going to go out and have tacos and margaritas knowing that you got Fran in 3 hours.
Yeah.
You either eat something better, or you eat whatever you had, whatever you brought to work, because hey, I'm not getting on that pull-up bar with tacos sloshing around my belly.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw up in the middle of the workout. And you're probably going to drink a little water. Like that lung burn and that dry mouth feeling, you remember that 8-minute Fran. So now that you're trying to go faster, you're going to drink a little water. So those habits come as a result of that. But we don't have to tell them, hey, we don't need to describe the importance of sleep and how much they have to do it. We don't have to describe all the eating and the drinking of water and all those other things. They intuitively figure a lot of that stuff out.
Yeah.
Because now, if I want to go faster on Fran, I'm not doing that with a poor night of sleep or bad food or being dehydrated. So we try to get them to focus on that performance part, because those other habits follow as a result.
I love that. Are you finished with your thought here? Yeah. I want to just bring it back to, once again, the games athlete, right? And especially specifically when it comes to nutrition. And this is something that you brought up in the panel at the CrossFit for Health Summit when you were talking about Chandler, I think Chandler Smith, right? About his
Yeah.
Snickers bar and how you see that. And like, let's put it into the bigger picture and put it into context, if you don't mind. Like us seeing these games athlete eating gummy bears and Snickers and all the stuff while they're fueling at the games.
Yeah, well, the concept I brought up at the panel was about displacement.
Yes.
So someone like Chandler at the peak of their training, like as they're preparing for the games, their concern is, how do I eat enough calories?
Yeah.
So if your goal is to limit your calories, you shouldn't be following the plan of someone whose goal is, how do I make sure I get enough calories in? They're two separate things. So if you only have a certain stomach volume and you only have a certain amount you can digest, for 99% of athletes, they have enough appetite, enough room in their stomach, enough ability to digest that they can get all of their nutritional needs met with whole foods, with things that are of higher quality. But a lot of the athletes, as their calorie needs go up, they can't eat. They might need 50% more calories, but they can't eat 50% more food.
No.
So the food as a result has to be denser in calories.
Yeah.
And when a everyday athlete does that, it displaces a lot of the good stuff.
Yeah.
So when they eat for breakfast, if they have a big plate of pancakes, those pancakes mean that something else that's higher quality isn't going to be eaten.
Yeah.
And you don't just have the effect of adding this to your diet. You have the effect of not eating these other things with nutrients that you need. And I think it's a double-edged sword. That for them, it's just in addition to all this other healthy food they're eating. But for most people, it's, I'm including this and not eating this. And so you have both. You have an effect of adding this to your diet and the effect of not eating these other things. And that's why it's a bigger deal for someone who's less active.
I mean, I really want to touch on, so with regards to the nutritional recommendations that you are talking to your members about, what exactly does that look like? Because nutrition is the base of the pyramid, right? In CrossFit. But specifically with your members, like what information do you share with them when they're first starting?
Well, when they first start, we take them through a 7-step process. And it's mostly around the habits. We can give someone a meal plan and tell them this is exactly what you should eat. But long term, if they don't fix these other habits that they have, they're not going to be able to comply with that long term. So the very first step is accountability. And that's not meant to be this big, like rah, be super disciplined thing. It's just that ultimately you are responsible. That you have to make a choice what to eat or what not to eat. That there's all these other factors that impact you, but it's ultimately your decision. And then our second step, which is by far the most important, is to clean the house out. For the most part, if we can get people to do step 2, they don't have to do anything else until they're already really fit. There's a really popular study on the number of food decisions people make.
Ooh.
And the average person makes about 200 food decisions a day.
That's me.
But see, they estimate that they only make 15.
Oh man, Graciano, last night there were Oreos in my cupboard. I swear I spent 200 thought decisions on why I should have them and why I shouldn't have them.
Well, see, that's where a lot of people get caught up, is we break it down to 3 environments:
Okay.
the home,
Yep.
your family and your outside family and friends, and then your work.
Yeah.
And the one that you have the most control over is your home.
Yeah.
So the home is the place that should provide you the least amount of stress. You have total control over it. If you don't want to eat it, get it out of the house. If you really want it, you will get in the car, go to the store, eat it, enjoy it, move on. But then when you come back home, you're not telling yourself no all the time.
Yeah.
It's not even available.
Yeah.
And if it's not available, you won't think about it.
Yeah.
So our second step is clean, and it's mostly to reduce those food decisions.
Mm-hmm.
They have a chart where they break down people by BMI, and they break down the number of food decisions they make in a day. And so the thing that pops out on the chart is that people with a BMI over 30, who would be classified as obese, they make upwards of 50% more food decisions on average. And as you make more decisions, your decision quality goes poor.
Yeah.
Your decisions in the morning when you're full of energy, you had a good night of sleep, are a lot better than they are at 7 p.m.
Yeah. Oh.
So if someone has to make 50% more food decisions, they're gonna make worse decisions. So if we can take those number of decisions down, they're gonna make better decisions as a result.
Yeah.
And the single thing they can do to reduce those decisions is get anything that they don't want to eat totally out of the house.
Yeah.
And then the other steps are more traditional. I think the third step is to plan.
Yeah.
And planning purely starts with setting a timeline of when you wake up, when you go to bed, and when you're going to eat. Because people have a plan where they're going to eat this meal at this time and forget they don't have any refrigeration or they don't have a microwave.
Yeah.
So if you write out a meal plan, but then there's no logistics to it, well, you're going to fail on it because you're not looking at what you have to work with.
Okay.
And then 4 is shop. We teach people how to shop. 5th is prep, where everybody thinks that is where all the work occurs, when that's probably the least important step, because you could order your meals. So you could go to any one of these companies and order all your meals and have them in the fridge. They deliver them right to your doorstep. You put them in the fridge, but then you have, a Costco-sized container of cookies in the pantry. And the meals go to waste because you're having cookies and milk. So the prep one is where everyone focuses, even though that's probably the least important one. Step 6 is eat. And that goes back to the same thing. You actually have to eat these things and not eat these things. You can have this great plan and it's all ready to go, but you actually have to execute on it. Meaning I take that food from the fridge or I cook it and eat it instead of in the moment saying, okay, what are we going to order for dinner and have delivered?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then 7's evaluate and repeat. That we tie in the same elements of virtuosity. That it's a process and that you're not gonna perfect it in the course of a month. You do your best at each step. When you get to the end, you look at what went well, what didn't go well, and then where is my time spent best? And almost every time, the failure is always at step 2, which was clean the house. So every time, like, if we look at a food log, it'll be, well, how did you eat this thing? Oh, well, it was in the cupboard. Well, how did it get in the cupboard? If you did step 2, it's not in the cupboard. But that's almost every time what you go back to. I was tired. I was stressed. I didn't want to do anything. I went to what was easy and convenient, which was that right there in the cupboard. And that's always the failure point.
Do you know what I love about what you're saying? Because I've heard like a lot of people obviously talk about like what you should do and the different step process. But you know what the one thing is that's missing is this evaluation step. And I think it feeds very much into your work life, like as a financial advisor and planner. Like you have this beautiful way of helping people work backwards, establishing the goals or the outcome that they want to have and what steps need to be taken to get there. And when something doesn't work, evaluating, or even if it does work, like evaluating what's next. Do our goals need to change? And I've seen that in interviews that you've done and in the way that you show up. And I really just want to say that I fucking love it.
I appreciate it. So I try to explain it as, your coach is supposed to be a GPS.
Ooh.
Like that's your coach's job. So you could make a map yourself. Like you can make a map and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do for the next 3 months. But if you go back 50 years where, you grab a map and say, okay, this is how I'm going to drive from here to LA. Well, your route isn't necessarily the best because there's construction, there's delays, there's accidents, there's all these kind of roadblocks that pop up. And then now you got to stop, figure out how to get there, figure out what now is the best route without complete information. So there's an accident here, so I take a detour, but then that road is shut down.
Yeah.
So I take another road and find out that, that road is flooded. So you end up having a very hard time with a map. But what a coach is supposed to do, they're supposed to be taking all that information, and a lot of times it's stuff that you as an athlete can't see yet. So wherever you are in your journey, people run into the same roadblocks over and over again. And once you've helped people through those, the next person on that journey, you already know what's going to pop up. So, for instance, one of the things that almost always pops up for people is we sit down for a snapshot meeting. And when we review their goals, I ask them, who do you hang out with that's fitter than you? And when someone's plateauing in the gym, their answer almost every time is nobody. I've become the fittest person that I know. No one in my family works out harder than me. No one in my friend group. Everywhere I go, I'm the fittest person. And so we try to explain to them that, well, that means when you guys go out to eat, they're encouraging you to eat worse than you probably otherwise would.
Yeah.
On the weekends, they're encouraging you to be less active than you probably would be on your own or in a different group. And that's a tough conversation for people that, hey, some of these people that you should reach out and make a little extra effort to spend more time with them. And the ones that are a little more aggressive about getting you to do things you don't necessarily want to do, either they got to change a little bit or you got to put a little distance there. And for some, that's an easy switch because, their environment outside the gym it may not be the greatest, but it's not that bad.
Yeah.
For some people, that environment is very discouraging for them.
Yeah.
But those are usually somewhere between around year 2 to 3. Like we know they're going to come up to this roadblock. And so as they're going through that journey, we have people that have been here for 10 years. So when someone's at year 2, our coaches know like, hey, we've already planned this for you. Like we've already set these things up knowing, hey, when you get here, these are the roadblocks that you're gonna have. And so a coach should be there to give that real-time feedback, those real-time adjustments, so that the route is always the best route. That you're on the best path. So when something changes, you know right away, hey, this is the new path we're taking, versus waiting until, oh, I'm stuck. What do I do now? It's, hey, let's make these adjustments before that point, so that doesn't become what stalls your progress.
I mean, my mind's kind of blown, like the way you've analyzed things. And I know you've been doing this for some time, right? And how you can tell exactly when something's going to happen, like the trends that you have been able to, focus on. I mean, my son is obsessed with Andrew Tate. Okay. Don't judge me. But anyway, part of that is being part of Hustler University, which essentially is teaching him how to play the stock market, or like work the stock market. And so he will plot these graphs. He's 14. He will plot these graphs as to what he thinks is going to happen on the stock market and the trends. And like, do you know what I mean? Like, anyway, it just reminds me so much of the way that you approach fitness and health, and the way that you are helping your members and the people that you coach. Anyway, just random side note. But okay, so Anthony, thank you for being here with us today. So happy you are. Graciano, can you drop the 7 steps into the chat? Not now, maybe send them to me later and I will add them to the recording of this. But can you just go through them just one by one real quick? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah. 1 is accountability / mindset.
Okay.
2 is clean. 3 is plan. 4 is shop. 5 is prep. 6 is eat. And 7 is evaluate and repeat.
Beautiful. Love, love, love that. We're talking a lot about food, and my passion is addiction and sugar addiction. And you posted something really interesting. It's a graph that looks at pleasure versus pain and the role that exercise plays in it. I don't know how to pull this kind of stuff up yet. This is our first live ever. So can you expand on that?
Yeah, there's a book that came out either 2 or 3 years ago. It's called Dopamine Nation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably been one of my favorite books. I think it's relevant. Its relevance today puts it at the very top of the list. If you were going to read something about how do I live a better life, it would be that book.
Okay.
And a lot of the elements in the book are things that we've known for thousands of years. We just can't prove it. So a lot of different religions and cultures have believed in the idea of balance, the idea of a yin and yang. Mm-hmm. But the book takes a neuroscience perspective of actually measuring these things to figure out, how does the body adapt? And one thing that was brought up at the health panel over and over again all relates back to one of the most basic physiological mechanisms, which is equilibrium. The body is always seeking out balance.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that there's not fluctuations, but you add one thing, the body compensates in a way to create that balance. So when you're looking inside the brain, an increase of dopamine results in an increase of pain to offset that dopamine increase. And so those two things are always in balance. If I have an excess of dopamine, I have to experience an equivalent amount of pain in order to balance that out. And so the central premise that she makes in the book is we don't recognize brains that are fundamentally addicted because your increase in dopamine is spread among so many different things. So today, when you're talking about addiction, it's very easy to see when someone's addicted because it's one thing that consumes them. So it's easy to see when all of that dopamine increase comes from alcohol, it's easy to see, hey, you got a drinking problem. When all of it comes from a different drug, it's easy to see, hey, you have a drug problem. But if you just have a little bit of a lot of different things, you still have the same dopamine imbalance as if you were addicted. But it's really hard to recognize that because no one thing is too big of a problem.
Yeah.
So today when you have nearly unlimited access to everything, you have a little bit of alcohol, you have a little bit of nicotine, you have some coffee through the day, you have TikTok on your lunch break, when you're going to the bathroom, you have Netflix at night, you can call in Uber Eats and get whatever you want. You have all these different things that are increasing your dopamine to a level that an addict would. Now, if you pull any one of those things out, you're going to experience similar withdrawal symptoms. So if I'm constantly in this state with a really high dopamine level, constantly seeking pleasure, the brain rewires itself to be less sensitive to it. And then your response is to seek a little bit more of those things.
Yeah.
So when that is spread out among 5, 6, 7 different guilty pleasures that you have, you become a little desensitized to it, and so you bump it up a little more. You become a little desensitized, you bump it up a little more.
Yeah.
Until you're at this point where you need this massive influx of pleasurable activities to enjoy anything. And you can see it in people where you think that, hey, they got everything going for them. Their life is great, everything is wonderful, but they're miserable all the time. Well, they really don't have an offsetting experience of pain to balance all those things out. And that's where the exercise comes into play. Because if you accept that the pain is always going to be there, if you accept that no matter what, I'm gonna have to experience that suffering, that there's not an option to not experience it, well, then you choose whether you want that suffering to just be random, like someone cuts you off in traffic and you just totally lose it, or they get your order wrong at Starbucks and all of a sudden you're screaming at the barista and going nuts on them, or if I choose behaviors which are inherently not that fun, but the benefits of it are worth it, so I'll do it. So for a lot of people, exercise is really not that fun. Like they don't go into the gym and think, oh, I'm gonna go run because on its own it's fun. It's fun because of the benefits.
Yeah.
It's fun because I get rewarded for it.
Yeah.
It's fun because I train and then I come back and I'm more capable.
Yeah. But
if you weren't getting those benefits, you probably wouldn't do it.
Right.
So
totally.
If it was like drinking, where the more I did of it, the more harm I was making. So I went and worked out and I got slower, or I lift weights and I come back weaker. Well, you would stop doing it. You're doing it because it inherently is not fun. It's inherently just uncomfortable, but the benefits outweigh that. So you could fill that part where if I choose the pain, which could be exercise, it could be anything difficult. I know that I have to feel, that level of discomfort. Well, I might as well get rewarded for it. And I think a lot of people have this fundamental misunderstanding, which is they can get rid of the pain, that they don't have to feel that way, that there's a way to totally avoid it, but there's not. That those feelings are inevitable. It's just whether or not you're going to get something for it or not. So if I take that amount of suffering that I have to go through, I choose to allocate that suffering towards exercise, or you could choose it in a lot of different ways. You could choose being a good parent in that role. Like if you really do the things that make a good parent, it's not that fun.
No,
it's not fun to hold your kids accountable.
No.
It's not fun to do all of those things, but the benefits are worth it. When they get older, they're responsible. Those benefits made those uncomfortable feelings worth it.
Yeah.
It could be studying for college. If you're going to school, Most people really don't enjoy studying that much. So you could stuff the studying in that role, but you have to put something there. Like there has to be something there because you're going to feel pleasure in equal amounts to your feelings of pain. So I could put exercise there. I could put being a good parent, studying. I could put all kinds of stuff into that pain spot. And now these little things during your day don't really bother you because your pleasure and your pain are in balance. But in the same way that you become desensitized to the pleasure when you have a constant excess of pleasure, you become desensitized to the pain when you have an excess of pain as well. So if you're constantly pushing the limits in your workout, you're constantly seeking out difficult stuff to do, the more you do difficult stuff, the more you do things that are uncomfortable, the less uncomfortable they become, which means it takes more pain to experience pain. But the flip side of that is it takes less pleasure to experience pleasure.
Oh.
So I use the idea of drinking water to get people to understand it, which is where we're at, it's 100 plus degrees in the summer.
Yeah, me too.
And so when it's that hot outside, you don't want to drink anything but water. Water is the most delicious thing. You don't want to eat. It's the most delicious thing in the world when it's that hot outside.
Yeah.
So you don't want soda, you don't want tea or coffee, just straight pure water.
Yeah.
And it's the best thing you're gonna do all day is drink that cup of water. But here in the winter, drinking water becomes a little bit of a chore. And so in one case, it's the greatest thing I do all day. In another case, it's a bit of a chore. So even though it's the same water, it's the same activity, you're doing the exact same thing, one I love, the other one's a chore. And what changed is the context of that. Having spent the last hour outside being miserable, this cup of water is now incredible. But if I'm inside and I'm comfortable all the time, I drink the water, it does nothing for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it because I'm supposed to drink it, but I don't get any fun out of it. So we want people to seek out something that is personally meaningful, but is difficult to do. Because if they do that, then everything else becomes more fun.
I honestly think that this is the most perfect way to end this conversation. I would love to unpack that more in further conversations. Do you have anything before we end? Because it's been an hour and I'm just hanging on to every word.
Yeah, what's our plans for the next health summit?
Oh, okay. Top secret, although we're live on air. I am hoping to plan something October. End October, beginning November, depending on the rogue dates. Don't want to do it at the same time. Even though it's probably a different audience, in Palm Springs, California. I want to do this freaking festival, this where we take what we learned at the Health Summit and do workshops and practical applications and expand more, especially the stuff on addiction, pain, pleasure, dopamine. I'd love for you to expand on that and do something, but definitely want to do end October, beginning November. I'm going to try get CrossFit to buy into it. Fingers crossed. Otherwise, I'm going to do it anyway. So please save the date and come.
All right, I'm going to circle October on the calendar.
End October, beginning November. There's this beautiful resort that I want to book, and I'm just finding out what dates they're available. Thank you, Sloppy. Great hearts, great minds. Thank you both. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. So grateful to everyone who was our very first YouTube Live ever on Valentine's Day. Oh,
you know what? I just noticed I got to click this button to see all the comments. I was on the private chat.
Wait, but Graciano, so you're in for the next one?
Yeah, I'm in.
Oops, I just kicked myself out of the studio. Oops. All right, okay. We will chat more, Graciano. I'm so grateful to you. This was super fun. I hope you have an amazing day. You
All
are
right, I
one.
appreciate it, Karen.
Okay, bye.